All right, we're here with the legend, the one and only Travis Tritt. Can't believe it. Finally happened. We were just talking about the cutouts before you came on. Can we make a cutout of you? This lady in Australia makes them off of Etsy. We got to get a cutout of a Travis Tritt
Yeah.
cardboard cutout to put in the office over there.
Yeah. I got George. I got Alan over here. Maybe get him in there.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I need Travis Tritt would be a great one. Maybe something straight from the '90s, signature mullet just blowing in the breeze.
I think there's some old ones that we used to do way back when that are probably still floating around somewhere. I don't know if you can find those anymore or not, but
I mean that outfit right there.
Dude,
I said to Wes, like, you look almost in a good way. You look like you could have been a wrestler in like the WWE or something.
yeah,
Was that kind of the like?
that was kind of the vibe back then. You know, I mean, it was like, especially when you're trying to break into the business, you want to establish yourself as something a little bit different, and that was all part of that. Plus I was a product of the places I'd been playing. I started out before I got a record deal. I was playing biker bars and pool halls and bowling alleys and honky tonks and beer joints. I played some pretty rough places too. I played some places that if you didn't have a gun or a knife at the front door, they'd give you one so everybody'd be equal.
so that's a fair fight.
Oh man, those days are gone. I mean,
yeah,
right?
thank God.
But "Smoking a Bar" is one of my favorite songs off the new album Set in Stone. And we're just into our early 30s, but we grew up listening to your music. It's crazy though how the times have changed so much the last 10 years. Because now when I talk to a 20-year-old, I'm like, oh my, I don't even know what planet you're living in compared to me, like just turning 30 recently. And
yeah.
So when I hear "Smoking a Bar," when I hear some of these things that you talk about in the song, I'm missing that stuff even.
Yeah.
You're missing it. But I think people like Wes and myself, we also miss it.
Well, there's a lot of nostalgia out there. And that's one of the things I've learned over the past probably 15 years or so. It started with hearing from people just, via social media or even people that I would, occasionally meet or talk to in person at shows or whatever. And they started out by saying, we like a lot of the country music that's out there, but man, we miss those stories, the stories that traditionally country music has told. We miss that. We don't hear that a lot anymore. It seems like that, nowadays that, most of the songs are about, partying and drinking beer and, having some type of a throwdown in a bean field somewhere. And, it's very little about, real life stories that people can relate to. And that's what the foundation of country music was always about. No matter what your background was or where you came from or what your social status was or how much money you made a year, there was something in a country music song that most people could relate to. And so it started out for me. I started hearing all these different people that were nostalgic for that. They wanted to hear more of the stories in country music. And then, of course, last year, with all the stuff that we went through with the pandemic and the lockdowns and the riots and all these different things, I started hearing from a lot of people that just basically said, man, wouldn't it be nice if we could just go back to a time not that long ago when people kind of trusted each other a little bit more and there wasn't all this upheaval and everybody seemed to kind of just get along a little bit better. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go back to that? So people were nostalgic for that too. And as soon as I heard "Smoking a Bar," for me, it just kind of captured all of those feelings that I'd heard from so many other people. I knew there were a lot of people that felt like that was something that they would like to have back in their lives that seemed to be missing, that was there at one point. So yeah, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, I mean, we're old enough to remember like smoking in bars when we would like go down to Nashville for like the
Yeah,
4th of July,
yeah,
and you couldn't see the other side of the room. Like, because growing up in Illinois, like it was outlawed by the time I could go to bars. So when
yeah.
I'd go down to Nashville, I'm like, what's this?
Oh
What's this?
man,
Give me one, give me one.
It's
trust
like you
me.
know it's bad, but there was something nice about waking up and not being able to wear those clothes again and having to like because seriously,
Yeah, I get it.
there's
Trust
one
me.
there's one bar in Chicago, Richards, that you're not
Yeah,
allowed to smoke. I don't know. It's just this divey bar.
yeah,
Maybe they have pickled hard-boiled eggs. You can
yeah.
still go in there and smoke because it's just like it's an institution type of place,
Sure.
and it does take you back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the days when I was first getting started, before I had record deals or anything, I was playing all those, every place that I played, man, it was like, it was so thick you couldn't even hardly see 10 feet in front of you. It was just part of the culture back then,
Yeah.
and it's funny because as I've traveled, I've gone all over the world, and apparently nobody has told anybody in Spain that cigarettes are bad for you.
Oh, right.
Because they smoke them like crazy over
Yeah.
there, and a lot of other places too. It's really strange to me just to see how things have changed a lot in so many different ways.
I think one of the best examples too of with your music things changing is like, here's a quarter, call somebody who cares.
Yeah.
Steve was talking about 20-year-olds, like they might not even understand that,
Oh, trust me,
right?
my kids.
Like a timeless like FU song, like it's just like it's such a classic for people my age. But then someday when I have kids, I got a little daughter on the way, but I'm gonna have to be like, well, back in the day, you had to put a quarter into a box on a wall and make a phone call.
I used to take when my kids are all pretty much grown now. But when they were just like toddlers, I used to take them out on the road with me, and we would all go together as a family. And my two oldest, which are now 23 and 22 respectively, um, I went on stage one night and I did my whole show, and I came back out of the bus, and both of them are sitting in the front lounge of the bus on the couch, and they're just kind of staring at me, and so I come up on the bus, and they stared at me for a few minutes, and finally waited till I, you know, kind of got toweled down a little bit and wiped the sweat off, and they said, "Dad, we have a question." I said, "Okay, what's your question?" They said, "Why do you need a quarter to call somebody?"
I
So
mean,
I started changing the lyrics on the last chorus. I changed it to, "Here's an iPhone, call someone who cares."
that's fresh. I can remember freshman year of high school football practice before I had a cell phone.
Yep.
I would put the payphone, and then what's your name? I would say, come pick me up. And then my parents would know, come
Yeah.
pick me up, man. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay the full price.
There you go. There you go. There you
So it's
go.
just like, it's funny. But speaking of your live show and stuff, do you have any rituals these days, or is it I assume a lot different today going on stage than it was back in the heyday, or no, you still have like a similar routine and ritual?
It's really
Or-
not any different for me. I somebody asked me a few months ago, what do I do to prepare to go on stage? Do I do vocal exercises or whatever? And it reminded me of Waylon Jennings, what Waylon used to say every single time that somebody asked him that question, because my answer is exactly the same. Waylon used to say, "No, I just get up off of whatever I'm sitting on and go out and sing." And that's pretty much me. I don't have any special rituals other than I do a shot of, I've got some buddies of mine that make some of the best apple pie moonshine I believe I've ever had in my entire life. So,
We need some.
as a tradition, I take a shot of that right before I go out on stage. Um, because and just to try to just kind of get the nerves down a little bit, because I still, to this day, I still get butterflies,
Mhm.
and I I'm one of those guys that thinks that if you don't have a little bit of those
Mhm.
butterflies or a little bit of nervousness or a little bit of whatever right before you go on stage, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because it's still as exciting to me as it was when I first got started. Um, I consider myself to be the luckiest guy on the face of the planet because I get to go out and do for a living what most people only dream about, and I get to do it almost every night. And it's I never take it for granted because that aspect of what I enjoy every part of what I do. I enjoy the songwriting. I enjoy going in the studio and recording, but far and away the best part of what I get to do is when I get to go out on stage in front of a live audience and bounce that ball of energy between the stage and the audience and have it kick back to me. And every time it goes back and forth, it seems to get just a little bit bigger and
Mhm.
more inflated. So, and I'm still shocked by all of that because, I wanted that when I was first getting started. Um, but I had no idea that it would happen the way that it did, as big as it did, and obviously no idea that it would still be going on after all this time, over 30 years,
Mhm.
to still be able to go out in front of a live audience and have them, be just as fired up as they were 30 years ago or longer. It's just, man,
Yeah.
I'm the luckiest guy on the planet.
Well,
Yeah.
this is a true story. I moved, but Wes and I used to share that office in Chicago where he is. I'm in Colorado now. We would do a podcast and we would get pretty buzzed after the podcast, just to cut loose, and we would
Yeah.
have some more drinks. We would pull up YouTube videos of just old, performance videos of whatever artists we like. You had some of these live performance videos. I don't know what year it was, but I think you're in all leather. You're doing like an acoustic.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. You do, I think, the Charlie Daniels cover. I think you
Yeah.
do It's a Great Day to Be Alive. I mean, these are some of the best. And we just were like, we got to share these. People probably haven't seen these in a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Like that energy that you create on stage, and to this day, like when we watch it, we're like, holy shit, this was good. It's hard to find, and we're not blowing smoke. It's hard to find artists today that can truly put on that type of
Yeah.
live performance, even when it's like stripped down a little bit,
Mhm.
like yourself. I mean, it's hard to find. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing up there. I
Like,
feel like
Your
'Cause
intro.
they get famous like that, and then hey, go on stage. They don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
these days.
A lot of people have never even had the opportunity to tour. They go out and
Yeah.
they have this day and age, which this blows my mind, that they'll go in and they'll have a hit, and then the record label or whoever, they start talking about going out on tour, and they don't know tour. What's that?
Yeah.
They've never done it before. And I almost feel sorry for artists like that because the one advantage that I had over a lot of those people was when I came to Nashville for the first time, I had played thousands of shows in front of a live audience. And I had already figured out, first of all, how to do it. And second of all, I found out who I was as an artist, what type of music I was supposed to be doing. I found out that my audience would accept certain things from me, and there's certain things that they wouldn't accept. I'll give you an example. When I first was getting started, of course, this is before record deals and before, you're releasing singles to radio. So I was basically a human jukebox. I was just playing, all the hits of the day. And for whatever reason, I found out very early on that I could go in and play a Hank Jr. song or a Waylon song or um, somebody like that or a Charlie Daniels song, and it went over great. But I would do or try to do a George Strait song. My audience wouldn't accept that from me. It
Mm.
just laid there. And so I figured that out early on. And it gave me such a great um, amount of confidence when I came to Nashville because the first thing that a record label will try to do in most cases is they'll say, "Oh, they'll tell you, oh man, we love what you do, man, we love what you do.
Mhm.
We want to sign you to a deal." And as soon as they sign you to the deal, they well, okay, we want to change this.
I'll do
We want to
this. I'll
change
do
this
that.
about you. Yeah, and it's like most people go along with it simply because of the fact that they don't have anything in their history to stand on to say, well, now wait a minute, I don't necessarily agree with that because I know from personal experience that my audience won't accept that from me, and they just go along with it, and I feel sorry for them. I really do. It's there is an amazing amount of knowledge and confidence and self-awareness that you get from playing in front of a live audience for an extended period of time. And those all of the things that I learned in those bars and clubs and places that I played way back when, I still draw on that every single night when I go on stage. I learned how to be more than just a singer or more than just a songwriter. I learned how to be an entertainer from doing all those shows back then. So that's where all that comes from.
I wanted to ask you, I've heard you in some interviews kind of single out some of the artists today that kind of stand out for you, probably for a similar reason. They're very authentic. They're who they are. I think you've mentioned Cody Jinks in the past.
Yeah.
And like in the mainstream, I think a guy like Luke Combs is like everybody roots for just because he's like
Yeah.
like a regular dude type of guy.
Absolutely.
But he just brings it on stage. Is anybody else out there that kind of you go, that guy or gal is doing it the right way, and you just really appreciate like kind of the path they've taken?
You know, the people that get my attention and the people that get my respect are usually, for the most part, there has to be three things. There have to be I like somebody that writes their own material, a songwriter, or writes most of their own material. I like that. Also, somebody that can play an instrument uh, proficiently. Um,
Mhm.
I that gets my attention. That says talent to me. And then somebody that knows how to go out there on stage and be themselves and not sound like anybody else. You recognize that person right off the bat. So I mean, there's a lot of people out there like that nowadays. Miranda Lambert stands out to me as being one of those. There's numerous others that, but they have to have, for me, they have to have all three of those elements in order to get my full attention and my full respect.
Absolutely. Chris Stapleton comes to mind.
Yeah,
Tyler
absolutely.
Childers.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. All of those guys and gals have those three things in common. They're capable of going out there. And I'm also I'm impressed by people that can just walk on a stage with no band, just themselves and a guitar, and hold an
Hold the
audience
room.
in the palm of their hand for however long they want to. Very few people can do that in this industry, and those people definitely get my respect.
Yeah, I think Steve was talking about that performance we watched after the podcast back in the day, and you playing the intro to Long Haired Country Boy and just shredding that guitar.
Oh, right.
Because I was like, fuck,
Yeah.
I didn't know Travis Tritt could pick like that. You know? Like I was young when you were in your heyday, so I was kind of like, I didn't know he could play like that. Shit.
Well, that's one of the things too. I think for years, when I first started, I always, even when I was doing band shows, with my band, but I would always send my band off stage halfway through the show,
Yeah.
and I would just play one or two songs acoustically just by myself because that's how I got started. And I wrote a lot of my songs. I wrote all my songs that way with just me and a guitar. So I would play something that I wrote, or I would play something that was one of my favorites, like, Long Hair Country Boy, whatever. But I started doing that, and I had booking agents and managers and other people that came up to me very early on, and they said, "Man, you ought to think about going out and doing a tour that is just you and a guitar." And I told every one of them, I said, "Y'all crazy as hell." I said, "There is no way anybody in their right mind is going to pay good money to come see a guy like me sit down with an acoustic guitar and play for an entire 90 minutes or 2 hours or however long." And I don't know why I thought that, because some of the greatest shows that I ever saw in my younger years, my teenage years, were exactly that. I saw John Denver that way. I saw Gordon Lightfoot that way. I saw James Taylor that way. I saw Jimmy Buffett that way. And I don't know why I thought that. Maybe I thought that I wasn't good enough to be able to pull it off. But they finally, about, I don't know, 15 years or so ago, somebody finally talked me into going out and just trying to do a tour like that. Just me and an acoustic guitar. And it worked. It worked. And the thing that I found is it gave me kind of a different opportunity, because back in those days, you know, we didn't start our tours until, April every year. Because most of the time, January, February, March, nobody wanted to go out on tour because everybody still had the Christmas hangover and the Christmas credit cards and, all that stuff that was left over. So they wouldn't pay for a band show. But we found that while they wouldn't pay for a band show, a lot of these promoters would definitely lay out the money for just a solo acoustic show. So it gave us the opportunity to take that out there and do it. And I also found out very early that when it's just me and an acoustic guitar on stage, that doesn't feel like a show to me. It feels much more intimate. It feels much more personal. It feels like playing music in my living room for my family and my friends. So it just kind of gave me one more dimension that I could venture off into and get a chance to take my music out and play it for as many people as I possibly could, which is the whole reason I got involved in this business to start with.
Well, I think that goes back to what you said too about being able to captivate a room by yourself. When
Yeah.
you can play for 20,000
Yeah.
and make it feel like the living room,
Yeah.
like that to me is when, okay, now you're doing something that is captivating. That's like, this person's talented. This is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
hard to do.
I think so.
Not everybody
It
can do
is.
it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, our job is to make it look easy, but it's definitely not easy. I mean, there's a lot of thought that goes into not only, doing the shows, but figuring out a set list, because my set list for the solo acoustic performances is totally different. It gives me an opportunity. A lot of times I get an opportunity to do songs that were big hits for me, but I get a chance to do them uh, solo acoustic when I may not have had a chance to do those songs with my band in a long time. So it's nice to be able to, have that opportunity if you just figure out, how to do it and how to keep it interesting for, 2 hours, telling stories in between, telling some of my experiences. That's something else I get a chance to do on those solo acoustic shows that I don't get a chance to do necessarily when we're doing band shows. So yeah, there's elements to both of them that I really enjoy, and I think the audience does too.
I wanted to ask about, speaking of it, kind of holding a room in the palm of your hand, or in a bar for that matter. It's a Great Day to Be Alive. You kind of covered, it had been released prior. Then I think in 2000 you released it. To me, that's when you talk about like I don't sing along song. I hate to use that term, but you go to any bar in America, and Friends in Low Places can come on. Maybe people go crazy, but other than that, It's a Great Day to Be Alive. Everybody knows the words to that song. I don't know if I've ever been at a bar, country bar or not. You can go to a Cubs game right now.
Yeah.
In Wrigleyville. You can go to any bar. As soon as they turn that song on, the entire bar starts screaming the lyrics. Is it kind of cool to have that?
Or yeah, it's very cool. And it's, you know, the funny part of that though, for me, that song did not chart that well. It out of all the songs that I had over the years that were, everybody now comes up to me and says, "Oh man, that had to be a huge hit." It wasn't. Yeah. It didn't chart that high. And it's funny to me to realize that somehow after the song was completely off the charts and did not do that well, all of a sudden, for some reason, people caught on to it and they latched on to it. And especially younger audiences. There are younger audiences out there now that know me strictly for that one song. Mm-hmm. They don't know any of the other hits that I had from, the 90s or the early 2000s, but they know that one. They know that song and they know every single lyric to it, and they sing along every single time that it comes on. So it's funny how that works, Sometimes you just never really know what a song is going to do, and you don't know how long it's going to take before a song really catches on with people. That song was really kind of a strange one. It was an anomaly because it was not really recognized at the time that we released it.
I imagine you get you've seen all the memes too. Like we've made some funny ones too. But it's like the rice stuff, the hair. Yeah. It's just like the ultimate mood booster type of song.
Oh, that comes on in a bar, you start kissing strangers, man. You're like, "Hey, I love you, bro. What's your name? Come here."
Yeah, everybody's hugging. It's true. That's a unique thing. It's like there's not a ton of those out there.
When you can find a song that has that kind of an impact on people, I think probably the greatest compliment that I've gotten on that song, and of course that's a song that I did not write. That was a Daryl Scott song that was brought to me early on, and several other people thought about recording it. There were several other people that put it on hold. There might have even been some other artists that actually did record it, but they never released it. And I don't know. It was just a thing. But the thing that I think is the biggest compliment is when I hear from people, mostly on social media, that'll say, "I start my day every single day. That is my alarm on my phone. When I wake up in the morning, it's a great day to be alive. It just puts me in a good mood. And I know if I start my day off with that song, that it's going to be a better day than it would be otherwise." So that means that song is resonating with people. It just, it's something they feel and something that puts them in a specific mood. And, it just shows you what the power of music really is, It's Absolutely. A very powerful medium.
You talk about social media and stuff. It's a war zone out there.
Yeah.
Whether you're on Instagram, it's just you're not one that's necessarily afraid to kind of speak your mind on there. But do you ever have to just be like, "I'm done with this shit," like Twitter and all that? Is it just because it's even for us, man? It's exhausting. Like we if we do like a great positive thing for like a countdown or you forgot about this person or where's this or what's the balance ratio of this? I'm like, we're doing our best. Sometimes things kind of, people get angry about literally anything now, and then they have a platform to kind of go out and say something, even if it's not true a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And
do
it can
you
pick up steam.
well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the thing too. So
I've learned some tricks to kind of help me deal with Twitter specifically. Because I used to be when I first started, and I started my Twitter account, I think in 2008, 2009, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I used to be the kind of guy, I'd put something out and then I would read every single comment from every person that responded to that particular tweet. And I've just learned over the years, I don't care
yeah.
what anybody has to say about it. I put out what I have to say, and then I don't read any of the rest of it. Um, I say what I have to say, and for the most part, uh, I also use it as a promotion tool for my music, which
Mhm.
is the biggest reason that I got
Yeah.
involved in
Right.
social media in the very beginning. If it wasn't for the fact that I needed to have um, these means of advertising where I'm going to be performing or that I have new music coming out or this, that, and the other, I wouldn't have a single social media platform on our account on any of the platforms because I absolutely hate it.
It sounds like
It's
a great time to not
Yeah.
have to
yeah,
check your phone for that stuff.
absolutely, man. I remember, and I constantly, I'm reminded of it. I talk with my wife and my kids about it because we'll go to a restaurant or go you know out someplace or even at home having go out and cook something on the grill and we're having a really nice deal. And I basically just tell my wife and kids, just take your cell phones, turn them off, put them somewhere else. I don't want to see them.
Having
Right.
dinner,
You know?
damn it.
Exactly. Well, this is dinner time,
Drinks.
man.
Yeah.
Let's have a actual conversation, with one another. And those are becoming very, very rare in society these days. And
Hmm.
man, I'm just, call me an old fart, but I'm one of those guys that believes in uh, we still have to have
Yeah.
open communication to be able to talk to one another without doing this all the
Oh
time.
my.
I
And
mean, it just drives me crazy.
to your point with that type of thing, putting your phones away, and like I I think in general it's made people probably a little more awkward and because they just don't know how to interact with people. So
Absolutely.
and even
Right.
we've met people who've run their mouth, and
Yeah.
then you meet them in person. Oh, you're a lot different in person than you are behind your Twitter account.
Right.
It's like, where's all this because people, it's a luxury people have to kind of take out their insecurities
Yeah.
and kind of put it on somebody else or try to, I mean, you have a lot of people.
Everybody's brave behind a keyboard, man.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, it's I try to not leave like if I have the Twitter up on the desktop, I try to not leave the notifications tab open because then I just
Yeah.
constantly see and I'm like, I really just don't want
Absolutely.
to see it. Put
I
it
don't
out
want to see
there
it.
and just kind of course you want to see like the good stuff, or if somebody says like it feels good, but you get
Yeah.
enough of the bullshit where it's just
Well, the bad thing about it is if you start reading your notifications, you can go through, and this is another. I mean, it's just human nature, but it's what happens. You can have 100 really great comments and one really nasty one.
Yeah.
And which one do you think you're going to focus on?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
one nasty one,
You're
right?
like,
So who needs that in their lives, man? It's poison bile that nobody that I know of needs in their life. And I'm not looking to be um, justified in what I'm doing by any
Yeah.
one particular person. My audience has always let me know very, very
Yeah.
strongly.
They'll buy tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. If they quit buying the tickets or if they quit buying the music, then that gets my
We'll circle
attention.
the wagons.
Yeah.
Right.
But until that happens, that's the only thing I pay attention to, man. I could care less what some
Yeah.
nameless person behind a keyboard that has 25 followers has to say about what I'm doing or not doing in their particular. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who
It's a great
cares?
it's a great reminder. And
Yeah.
one guy who is pretty funny on Twitter or Instagram sometimes, you hung out with Guy Fieri, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blake Shaw. I gotta imagine you guys were having some drinks in that
Oh, yeah.
situation.
Margaritas
yeah.
were had.
Oh yeah.
Margaritas? Is that the drink
Well,
of choice?
Well, in his case, it's tequila shots.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Shot guy.
Yeah, he likes to do tequila shots a lot. I can't do that. I can't. I'm not a shot guy, but I know that he was pulling my my wife and my daughter and my sons off to the side, and like
Sure.
do a tequila shot, and this, that, and the other. So yeah, but he's a great guy though.
Is he?
I really enjoy hanging out with him. He's just he's exactly who you see. What you see is what you get with him.
I wonder about that. I used to wonder about that. I'm like, he does seem like if you met Guy Fieri, that's
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, that's him. That's him. That's him.
But he's got that weird tequila, doesn't he, with Sammy Hagar's? It's like a mezcal tequila blend or something.
I
don't know.
have no idea.
I thought he might have something out there like that. I saw that photo. I was like, what a interesting group. And was
Me, him,
Gwen there? And
Blake, Gwen, yeah.
yeah.
That was actually that was for Clint Boyer,
Oh, that's
the race car driver. That was for his retirement party and his birthday, actually. And so all of these people came in. It was really kind of a unbelievable night, and I didn't even know that a lot of those people were going to be there until we actually showed up. And it's like Vince Neil's there, and he's performing, and I was performing, but all these other, Michael Waddell and all these other people are there, and of course Guy and Blake and Gwen and all these other people. So it was just a great opportunity to just hang out with people that that are all friends and know each other, and just have a good time. Let your hair down.
Speaking of Twitter that we were kind of talking about earlier, there was something that you tweeted fairly recently that stuck out to me about thinking you might have been born in Texas, which was obviously a joke, but like,
yeah,
just the way that Texas musicians tend to kind of approach making music
absolutely,
and being a little bit more authentic and honest and kind of just doing it their own way.
exactly.
Can you speak a little bit on how you kind of see the Texas music industry versus kind of the Nashville industry?
Well, I mean, all that goes back to some of my biggest heroes. Everybody knows that, I grew up probably Waylon Jennings' biggest fan, and had the wonderful opportunity of meeting Waylon and getting to know Waylon very well. He was almost like a second father to me, and he was always encouraging me. As a matter of fact, in the early days when I was just trying to do things a little bit different, you pointed out that picture earlier. I came out as part of the class of '89 with Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, and Clint Black. And all three of those guys, they all had, they're very clean cut. They had the cowboy hats. They had the starch pressed shirts, and I was totally the opposite of that, man, because I came from, I loved straight ahead traditional country music just like those guys, but I also had a tremendous amount of Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers and the Marshall Tucker Band, and also blues people like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eric Clapton and B.B. King and Buddy Guy and those guys in my past and upbringing as well. So I was doing things a little bit different. And when I came out with a song, I think it was my fourth single called "Put Some Drive in Your Country," had all these southern rock guitars on it, and it was different. And prior to that, now keep in mind, my first three singles were in this order: "Country Club," "Help Me Hold On," "I'm Gonna Be Somebody," which those fit kind of right in the middle of that country mainstream thing. And man, they loved me. Two of those first three singles went number one. But when I got to that fourth single, "Put Some Drive in Your Country," and had all those screaming uh, southern rock Leonard Skinner guitars and that kind of stuff on there, man. And I'm talking about the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner, and man, it was just a backlash. I mean, they turned on me in Nashville overnight, and I started getting grief from not only the my record label, but I started getting it from uh, country music program directors and writers for these country magazines and all these places. And all of a sudden, you know,
Was
well,
George Strait saying anything?
no, George Strait never said anything. It was primarily from the people inside the industry, the not other artists, but those people, man, they were brutal. And they started out with, well, he's just a rebel, or he's trying to be uh different on purpose. He's trying to go against the grain, and he's he must be hard to get along with. And some of them actually just came out and said it. They said, behind the scenes, well, this guy must be an asshole. And then they hit me with the one that made the most of an impact. They said, well, look, here's what he is. He's an outlaw. He's an outlaw. And they didn't mean it in a good way. And to be honest, it was starting to really get to me. It was getting under my skin. Um, and I was getting a little bit, I don't know if depressed is the right word for it, but it was bothering me until I met Waylon Jennings. And the first time that I met Waylon, I was doing a show with him in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Omni in Atlanta. And I went backstage right before the show to meet him. And of course, we took pictures, and I had a little small group with me, some people that worked for the record label and this, that, and the other. And after we met and shook hands and took pictures, I'm getting ready to leave, and I'm the last one to the door. And just as I'm getting ready to walk out the door, I've got my hand on the doorknob, and Waylon said over my shoulder, he gets, "Hey, Hoss, come here a minute. I want to talk to you." I turned around and looked just to make sure he's talking to me. I said, "Me?" He said, "Yeah, you. Come here. I want to talk to you for a second." He said, "I've been hearing all these things that they've been saying about you on the radio stations, and some of these people in Nashville and some of these country music magazines." And he said, "I just want you to remember one thing." He said, "Those people get their music for free. They never pay a dime for music." And he said, "The only people that you need to care about are the people that work hard 40, 50, 60 hours a week to put food on the table for their families and put a roof over their heads." And he said, "And those people that are willing to spend some of that hard earned money to go out and buy your music every time you release a new product, or occasionally they will splurge for a concert ticket to come see you play when you play live somewhere close to them." He said, "Those are the only people that you need to care about. To hell with the rest of them." And it was like an epiphany for me. It just lifted all of that BS off of my shoulders, because I realized he was exactly right. And I've never worried about it since, a day since. Um, it's always been about, your audience will let you know if you're doing something right or if you're doing something that they don't approve of. And outside of their opinion, who cares? You know, outside of, as long as they are telling you what they like and they're on board with whatever it is that you're doing, um, stay with it, man.
Yeah.
Just, it's a program that you don't need to change.
Advice that kind of applies to a lot of, I mean, whether it's doing what we do or people in other careers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's real easy to start looking over your shoulder and start paying attention to what others are doing. And
Yeah,
you said
exactly.
something funny that we've brought up on other podcasts with even current artists. It's crazy that it happened to you as well. We've noticed this trend now. We've been doing it for a handful of years. A lot of the artists we like a lot, to us, when we meet them, whether it's for a podcast or just a, hey, what's up, have a beer, or it's you're playing their music, whatever, they're the same person. Like you can have a normal conversation. It's like you're talking to a buddy, whether the mic's on or off, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But then there's these other artists that coming out of Nashville that it's like they're clearly reading from a script, as I like to say it. They're not. I'm like, this isn't. You're like a robot. This isn't real. But then you start to talk to radio people or whoever you know, somebody here or there in the industry. They're like, oh, so and so is an asshole. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's the coolest guy we've ever met.
Yeah,
I love that guy.
Exactly.
But then it's like you start to really realize, oh, the people that are just themselves and normal and believe in themselves and are authentic and aren't full of shit.
Yeah.
People scoff at that. They're like, huh, no, can't do that.
Right.
It's like, and it was happened to you back then. It still happens today with some artists where they don't do the song and dance.
Yeah.
You know, they want to do their thing. And if it works, great. It's going to connect with those fans, but they're not trying to I got to put on.
They're not trying to be somebody that they're not. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, and the funny thing about it is most of the people that were saying those things about me back then, and even to this day, have never met me. They don't know me. They wouldn't know me from Adam's house cat if I walked into a bar to sit down and have a drink with them, you know?
Yeah.
So once again, who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, I know who I am, and I've always stayed true to me, and I'm just like you guys. The people that I really like are the people that are exactly the same every time you see them. Mm-hmm. They don't put on any kind of airs for you. They don't try to change up, you know, this, that, and the other. It's the same person every single time you see them. That's who what you see is what you get.
Absolutely.
And those are the people that I've always, you know, been sort of attracted to and bonded with throughout my entire career and throughout my entire life, really, you know, because they're real. And I can spot bullshit now as a result of that. I can spot it a mile away.
I love it.
And I'm sure you guys can too.
Yeah, we can. But your new album is not bullshit. It is authentic. It's real. It's Travis Tritt. We got to get to that before we go.
Yeah.
You had the great Dave Cobb produce it. You had a bunch of amazing writers and yourself, of course, writing a bunch of the songs. The album was a long time coming. You hadn't released one. What was it? Is it 14 years?
Yeah.
I mean, the process of recording it, did it just feel like riding a bike? You just jump right in, or was it a little bit of a different situation for you?
I'll be honest with you. Prior to meeting Dave Cobb, I was nervous about it because my manager, I met my current manager about 3 years ago. And we started working together. Up to that point, for the last 10 years, I had been managing myself pretty much. And as soon as we met, one of the first things that he told me was, he said, you know, you've had a great career. And I still think, though, that you have a lot of great music left in you. I think that you've got a lot of music left that you can write. I think you've got a lot of music left that you can record. And I would like to see you do that simply because of the fact, not only does that feed your loyal fans, but it also gives you the opportunity to maybe draw in new people that have never listened to you before. And the more I started thinking about that, the more I started thinking that's probably a really good idea. But I was very nervous about it because I realized that in that 14-year hiatus that things had changed a lot. how people record music had changed a lot. And um, I was nervous about that, to be honest, until I met Dave Cobb. And when Dave Cobb and I first started talking about just doing the album, he said, I just want to let you know how I do it. And I said, okay, I'm interested in hearing this. He said, I know a lot of people, they use tracks and they use samples and digital this and digital that. He said, I do it like this. I bring in a live band, musicians. We all are in the same room together at the same time. And he said, and I want to record as many of your live vocals while we're laying the tracks down, while you're playing on these tracks. I want to get as many of your live vocals right then and there as possible. And when he said that, man, it just took a weight off my shoulders, because that's exactly the way that I've done it ever since I started recording back in the 80s, is to do it exactly that way. And he also said, I like to record as much of the stuff, you know, analog as possible. He said, I still mix to tape. I like to do it, the old fashioned way. And I'm like, yes, thank God, because that's
Sign me up.
yeah, absolutely, man, because that's the way I've always done it. And that's one of the things I realized too early on, is why his records sound so great,
Oh, yeah.
because that's exactly the way he does it on everybody, from Stapleton to Sturgill Simpson to Jason Isbell to Brandy Carlisle to whoever.
Yep.
Those records have a sound to them and a vibe to them that you can only accomplish that way. So it was just a great experience. And the other part for me that was extremely surprising and rewarding was the first thing that Dave did when we started talking about doing a record. He said, I want to hook you up with some of my favorite songwriters, younger songwriters, and that you've never worked with before. And I want you to see what you guys can come up with. So once again, that's a little nerve wracking, because,
Right.
You're used to having a certain group of people that you write with, traditionally. And getting to know these new people is a little unnerving. It's like, are we going to work? Are we going to gel? Are we going to have anything in common that we want to say? And the most rewarding part of that for me was all of these young songwriters that were very successful in their own right. Almost every single one of them told me how much my music had influenced them when they were younger. And as
Right.
an artist, you don't think, at least I never did. I never thought about that. I mean, my whole
Right.
goal was to try to take my music to as many people as I possibly could. But I never thought about the fact that out of that group of people that I'm taking my music to, there's going to be a certain amount of those people that are going to want to be in this business as well, in some facet, as a songwriter, or as a performer, or as a musician, or as an engineer or producer, whatever it may be. So to hear that from all of these different people was extremely rewarding for me, and it was humbling, but it's something that you think about and you go, man, that's very, very cool that I've had that kind of career that has influenced so many younger people, and they're not ashamed to tell you about it.
Yeah, we had Brent Cobb on the podcast. He's awesome. And you also wrote with Adam Hood, Ashley Monroe,
Yeah.
Channing Wilson. So a lot of really great
Dylan
names.
Carmichael.
Yeah,
Yes.
Carmichael. And before we let you go, and this has been amazing, honestly, such a good time. You're going out to do some dates with Brooks and Dunn, correct?
Yeah, we're doing.
What's it like going out with those guys?
I have no idea.
You never. I don't know if you've ever played a show over the years or
Never toured with them.
Cool.
I know them strictly from, I mean, we've hung out together like at the Kentucky Derby, and we've we've
Oh, that's right.
seen each other and met each other, at award shows or BMI or, whatever it may be. But we've never actually toured together before. So this is going to be a first time for me as well. But I'm looking forward to it. We're doing 17 shows together. We were supposed to do them last year. And of course the pandemic, came and had other ideas,
Right.
but, I'm excited about it because it gives us an opportunity to go out and just remind people of um, how special the '90s were.
Oof,
I mean, both of us,
so
both
Yeah.
both acts, Brooks and Dunn and me, both came out at a time when I think most people, if you were to ask them, what's the most influential or the most special time for country music? I think 9 people out of
Yeah.
10 would tell you the music of the '90s was the greatest, era for country music. So I
Right.
think to put us both together in an opportunity to take our music and and remind people one more time of just how special that particular time was. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
a great opportunity for all of us.
Did you have any sense of that at the time? Because it's like it's hard to really be like you're making music, you're crushing
I mean,
it.
I knew it was something special because I knew what was happening. I mean, in the years prior, country music had moments where it was doing extremely well, but it would go back and forth ever since, the urban cowboy days and, all of that.
Yeah.
But in prior to 1989, country music had actually dropped by about 27%. And, it was not doing as well as it had in previous moments before. And after between 1989 and 1991, I think country music sales increased, from uh, I think it was around $400 million a year to almost a billion, by 1991. And then between 1991 and 1995, it doubled again
Hmm.
to over 2 billion in sales. So I realized, at that time, yeah, there's something really special going on here. But to be a part of it and really realize, you know, sometimes when you're in the eye of a hurricane, it's very
Right.
difficult to realize exactly, how big of a hurricane this really is. But I just consider myself to be extremely fortunate, not only to have a career in this business, but for it to have happened at the time that it did. There's a
Yeah.
old
Right.
saying that timing is everything, and that's certainly true.
last
Yeah.
question. You mentioned the Kentucky Derby. I want to say I've shared this photo.
I was thinking about that too.
I swear, isn't there a photo of you back in the day at Kentucky Derby? You, P. Diddy,
Yeah.
Kid
just
Rock
the
and
Ge-
George Strait.
Kid
or
Rock and
something
George
like
Schrader.
that.
It's something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been one hell of a party, or one hell of a group to hang out with.
It,
you
you know,
remember
it
that
is.
party?
It is every year. There's a thing called the Barnstable Brown Gala that takes place the night before the Derby, and they are the people that got me and my wife both involved in coming to the Derby. They invite all these different people, um, from all these different genres of music and entertainment to come in um, and do a benefit, basically, um, for diabetes research. And they ended up they've now got a Barnstable Brown, wing at, uh, Kentucky University Hospital. Um, so it's a great cause, but it also brings together some, very, very unique people that you would never think about being. I mean, I've been on that same stage with everybody from Salt and Pepper to, Bobby Brown to Kid Rock, to George Strait, to Brooks and Dunn, to Stevie Nicks, to Richie Zambora, to you name it, man.
That's such a good time.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Well,
it's a great time.
Travis, can't thank you enough for your time. An honor to talk to somebody we grew up listening to. Set in Stone is out now. Everybody go listen. And then the Brooks and Dunn tour. When does that kick off with them?
That's September the 2nd. That kicks off in Cincinnati, Ohio on September the 2nd.
All right, Travis. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good one.